You're not safe. Not here, not now. The wind howls low like a predator's growl, and your fire, your only defense, sputters in the icy dark. You feel it again, the sensation that something watches from the black beyond the cave mouth. The world 40,000 years ago is not just wilderness, it's war. A daily, silent war of survival. You are prey, and the predators, they are faster, smarter, hungrier. But then you reach for it, the carved object your tribe never travels without. Not just a tool, a talisman, a warning, a weapon, etched in symbols whose meanings we are only just beginning to understand. Why did they carve it this way? What did it truly mean? And what if those carvings weren't just about animals, but about fear itself? Welcome to the Ice Age, and what you carved to survive it. You feel it before you hear it, that tightening in your gut, that heat crawling up your spine. The trees are silent now, too silent, and the air has a thickness to it that no wind breaks. You are walking, but you are no longer alone. You don't know what it is, only that it's watching, waiting, measuring the rhythm of your steps. The Ice Age forest does not welcome you. It observes you. There are no paths, no fences, no flickering street lamps to tell you where safety ends. Just an endless sea of gnarled trees and skeletal branches stretching out like claws above your head. Behind you, the fire has long since died, and ahead, only shadow. Every movement, every rustle, every crack of a twig might be the last sound you hear before the end. You do not hunt, not tonight. Tonight you are hunted. This is what it meant to be human. Before walls, before weapons, before you had the arrogance to call yourself Apex. You are not the first to feel this. The fear is ancient, deeper than memory, older than language. It lives in the marrow of your bones and the twist of your instincts. And long before it had words, it had consequences. Because something was always watching. The fossil record doesn't whisper, it screams. Hominin bones pierced by saber-like teeth, crania crushed by blunt force trauma, femurs gnawed by giant hyenas and dire wolves. They tell a story not of conquest, but of survival bought in blood. Your ancestors were not masters of their domain. They were intruders in a world built by predators. Visitors in a house they did not own. Not yet. Some nights they made it, some they didn't. Claw marks carved into limestone cave walls, 8 feet high, far beyond human reach. Massive gouges left by cave bears rearing upright. Did they enter the cave first? Or did we? Maybe we waited for them to leave, maybe we shared the space, awkwardly, desperately. Maybe we were just hoping they wouldn't come back. Even the oldest shelters have no locks, no hinges. Only shadows and shallow fire pits. You imagine lying there, curled beside others, not sleeping but listening, counting the seconds between the howls. You imagine praying, even if you don't have a God yet. But perhaps the more terrifying truth is this. It wasn't just the beasts you could hear that hunted you. Some came without a sound. Terror birds with dagger beaks and silence in their stride. Giant cats with padded paws and night vision that turned darkness into a weapon. You might not see them until they were already upon you. You wouldn't get to scream. You wouldn't even get to run. Your only warning was the breath behind you. And it's here, right here, that fear begins to evolve. Not just in your mind, but in your body. Adrenal glands flood your bloodstream. Pupils widen, hearing sharpens, muscles coil. These aren't just responses, they are inheritances, passed down from survivors. Those who ran, those who froze, those who guessed correctly just once and lived. And those who carved. Because even in that state, exhausted, hunted, half-starved, your kind did something no other animal did. You remembered. You began to record, not with language, not yet, but with scratches, grooves, and shapes cut into bone, antler, and stone, lines too deliberate to be accidents. You weren't writing stories. You were mapping survival. You were externalizing terror, passing it on. You had no books, so you carved fear into your tools. This is the birth of strategy, not just reaction but premeditation. When you picked up a sharp rock, it wasn't just a weapon, it was a promise, a totem against being eaten, a protest against the silence of extinction. The first carvings were not art, they were evidence of calculated desperation. You were beginning to understand that not all fear is weakness. Sometimes, fear is intelligence at work. But even intelligence has limits. Because predators don't just chase, they learn. The lions remember where you slept last. The wolves circle closer each night. The terror bird studies your trails until it knows which ones loop and which ones lead home. The rules of the game shift, and so must you. You start walking differently, sticking to higher ground, timing your movements, sharing information in guttural calls and gestures. You mimic predator sounds to scare off others. You rub certain herbs on your skin to mask scent, but it's not enough. Sometimes someone doesn't come back. And every loss, every death teaches you more. You begin to carve not just tools but signs, markings near trees, symbols near caves. No language, just memory made visible. And maybe, deep down, you aren't even doing it for others. Maybe you're doing it because you need to know someone else remembers, that what happened to them won't happen again. Maybe this is where culture is born, not from joy but from threat, not from celebration but from mourning. You start to understand what it means to be prey and you adapt. You become unpredictable. You change your patterns. You train your young to fear the scent of cats and the sound of windless silence. And slowly, painfully, you begin to earn the right to survive. Not dominate, not yet, but endure. Still, every night you wait. You wait to hear the breath behind you, to know if this is a night you live or a night you vanish. And on the nights you do survive, you leave something behind. Not just tracks, not just fire, but marks, intentional marks, because one day someone will stand where you stood, and maybe they'll feel the same thing you felt. The tightness in the chest, the sudden stillness in the wind, the impossible silence that screams louder than any predator's roar. The breath behind them. And when they do, they'll know they're not alone. They never were. Because every fear has a beginning. And this is yours. The carvings are waiting. You believe the fire will protect you. You believe its glow carves out a circle of safety, a fragile border against the unknown. You sit by its edge, watching sparks twist into the night sky like tiny spirits escaping. The light flickers across your face, warm on one side, cold on the other. And for a moment, you pretend the world ends where the firelight fades. But it doesn't. It never did. Because in this place, this ancient, breathing dark fire isn't a fortress. It's a signal, a beacon in the black, an invitation to every pair of eyes lurking just beyond the tree line. The predators are not afraid of it, not all of them. Some are drawn to it. You hear it first, the low crunch of leaves under something heavy, calculated, then silence, then nothing. The fire dances on, indifferent. The others in your group freeze too, senses tightening, necks tensing. You don't speak. You don't move. You just feel it, the weight of being watched. And now you understand. Fire wasn't the solution. It was just the beginning. Because in the ashes of your ancestors' camps, archaeologists have found more than burnt bones and charred wood. They've found predator remains, scattered teeth, smashed skulls, evidence of creatures that came too close, evidence of battles you were never meant to win, only survive. So you adapt, you learn. You start building more than fires. You build barriers. Circles of thorn branches dragged across cave mouths. Walls of jagged stones meant to trip the unwelcome. Even rings of mammoth bones, stacked high, not just for structure but for warning. Not to keep the predators out, but to tell them, someone here fights back. Still, fire alone is too temporary. It flickers, it dies, rain drowns it, wind steals it. A moment of inattention and you're in the dark again, vulnerable, breakable, forgotten. So you innovate. You begin to carve again, not art but alert. Strange patterns etched into rocks near campsites, grooves near sleeping spots. They're not decorative. They're placed where you would stumble, where a returning human would step and remember, stay awake. These marks are not invitations. They are warnings. Some are aggressive, jagged, rushed. Others are calculated, almost sacred. You start to wonder, who were they for? Yourself, the others, the children who might wander too far, or were they meant for something else entirely, something watching, something that needed to be told, this ground is not yours anymore. And now you begin to see it clearly. Fire wasn't power. Anticipation was. Because to survive here, you can't just react. You must think forward, imagine futures, predict danger before it arrives. Your mind becomes your true weapon, not your hands, not your fire, not your tools, just your ability to guess. And when you're wrong, you die. But when you're right, you live long enough to pass the memory on. That's how ingenuity is born, not from comfort but from sheer desperation. You don't innovate because it's fun. You do it because you've seen what happens when you don't. You've seen what silence means, what claw marks on sleeping mats mean, what it looks like when a child goes missing before dawn. So you build smarter. You start assigning watches, sleeping in shifts, placing sentries near the edges of the light, creating sound traps, shells hanging from branches that rattle if touched, bones tied to vines that snap and clack like teeth. And over time, your camp becomes more than a place to rest. It becomes a system. Fire at the center, barriers at the edge, memory carved into every step in between. You're no longer just trying to survive the night. You're trying to own it. But the night resists. Because every new strategy forces the predators to evolve too. The wolves become more patient. The big cats more silent. They learn your routines. They wait until fire is low, until the watchers blink too long, until the children wander too far for too long. You will never win completely. And maybe that's the point. Because the fear, the tension, it keeps you sharp. It teaches you. You stop seeing fire as a guarantee. You begin to view it as a tool, useful, yes, but flawed, temporary. You know now, survival isn't fire. It's everything you build around the fire. It's what you leave behind in the ash. And so, as the flames crackle and the darkness breathes just outside your camp, you sit a little straighter. You keep your tools within arm's reach. You trace your fingers across the old carvings near your sleeping spot and remind yourself, they weren't left for decoration. They were instructions. And the most important one is this: fire was never enough. But you might be. If you keep watching. If you keep remembering. If you never, ever forget what waits beyond the light. You pick up the piece of bone. It's cool, polished smooth by thousands of years of hands, or time, or both. You think at first it's nothing, just a splinter of the past, a leftover from some forgotten meal or forgotten death. But then you see the marks. Tiny incisions, barely deeper than the width of a fingernail. At first they seem random. A line here, a slash there. But the more you look, the more deliberate it feels. Zigzags that seem to pulse. Dots that seem too evenly spaced. Your fingers move across the pattern like reading a braille you were never taught, and something inside you tightens, because this isn't decoration. This is intention. You're not alone in this feeling. Archaeologists have found these objects scattered across the late Pleistocene world. Fragments of antler, ivory, and bone, carved not with images but with patterns. Repeating grooves, mathematical groupings, lines nested in spirals, and no one agrees what they meant. But what if they weren't meant to be understood by us? What if they were survival codes? You kneel beside a mammoth ivory rod etched with tally-like cuts that spiral toward its base. Some say it's ritual. Others say it's calendar-like, tracking days, moon phases, seasons. But imagine a different purpose. Imagine you just crossed a plain where you lost someone. A place where predators waited in the tall grass, hidden until it was too late. You don't write that story. You don't draw it. You carve it onto your tools, onto your child's toy, onto the thing that will travel with someone into the same plane. Because the memory must move forward. You don't get paper. You don't get warnings posted on trees. You get a piece of bone and the desperate hope that someone will notice the way the lines curve when danger lurks in the north. And some carvings go even deeper. A spear thrower shaped like a lioness mid-leap, found in the cave of La Madeleine. Not just a beautiful form, but a reminder. Where lionesses move like that, prey disappears. Where the predators crouch low, they strike without sound. The carving is memory made portable, a tactical whisper across generations. Or the enigmatic batons de commandment, antler rods with bored holes and concentric carvings, long thought to be ceremonial. But when you hold one, you feel balance. You feel aim. You feel repetition in the carvings, as if they align with certain finger placements. Could they have been practice tools, ranged guides, directional indicators in a hunt? Not religious relics, but field manuals. And still, the deeper you look, the more ambiguous it becomes. Because humans have never separated the spiritual from the practical. For your ancestors, survival was sacred. The hunt wasn't just for food, it was for identity. Every kill a prayer, every wound a lesson. So the carvings didn't need to choose between beauty and utility. They could be both. A reindeer antler carved with flowing lines might soothe your hands while you wait out the storm. But those same lines could trace a river's shape, the angle of a ravine, the edge of a migration route. You begin to realize these were not primitive doodles. They were mnemonic systems, carried knowledge, field notes that wouldn't rot, records made to be touched, not read, stories encoded in texture because spoken words fade but bone lasts. And when your child's life depends on not repeating your mistakes, you don't write a journal. You etch the truth into permanence. You imagine sitting by the fire, your child's fingers running across the same grooves yours once did. You say nothing. You don't need to. Their hands are reading something older than your voice. And in that moment, something shifts inside you. You see how intelligence was passed on not in words but in tools, not in abstraction but in touch. The human brain adapting not just to remember but to externalize memory, to offload pain, to encode experience. This is what no other animal does. Not just live but worn. Because survival isn't just about your body anymore. It's about what your hands can leave behind. So now, when you see the carvings on a blade handle or a throwing stick or a broken pendant, you don't dismiss them as decoration. You lean in. You listen. You remember that every scratch might be a map. Every dot might be a count of days without food. Every curve might trace the route back to shelter. Not art, not religion. Clues. And somewhere deep inside, you realize you do the same thing even now. You write in margins. You draw symbols on napkins. You underline sentences you know you'll forget. You tattoo memories onto skin. It's the same instinct. To hold on. To pass on. To leave behind more than your body. Because fire fades. And flesh fails. But bone remembers. And it still speaks. Even now. You are not human now. You are the cave lion, muscles coiled beneath sleek fur, eyes cutting through the thickening dusk. You smell the air, a tangle of damp earth, crushed leaves, and something sharp, the scent of your prey. It's faint but unmistakable, the scent of fear, of movement, of life. You are the hunter, and you are patient. Your gaze locks on the flicker of firelight, an anomaly in this endless dark. You see shapes huddled close, too noisy, too careless. But beneath that noise you sense something else. Patterns, habits, the rhythms of prey bound by the fragile comfort of light. You are not hunting blindly. You have watched them. You have learned. Across countless nights, you and your kin, the dire wolves, the giant bears, have studied the humans. You've tracked their footsteps through the tangled forests and open plains. You know when they sleep, when they hunt, when they scatter like startled birds. You know their weaknesses, the way they hesitate, the way they gather in tight clusters, the moments when their fire dies low. To you, they are puzzles, moving puzzles. You do not just chase them, you test them. You follow their trails but never reveal your presence too soon. You circle, observe, wait for mistakes. When you strike, it is swift and decisive. But even in failure, you learn. Each encounter shapes your approach. Because you are not a mindless beast. You are a strategist. And that means humans are not passive victims. They are players in a game you have learned to read. The way they carve false trails in the mud, toss bones to confuse scent, even abandon campsites to mislead, these are not desperation moves. They are countermeasures born from understanding you. Fear, then, is not only a feeling, it is a calculation. It shapes their every decision. Their migrations, their carvings, their silent watches, they are responses to your logic. You make them run. You make them hide. But in doing so, you teach them. To survive, you realize they must think like you. They must predict your moves before you make them. Anticipate your hunger, your patience, your cunning. And when you do, a new kind of contest emerges. Not just predator and prey, but predator and prey locked in a timeless dance. You are learning, they are learning. And somewhere in this shadowed balance lies the thin line between life and death. You crouch low, the cold earth pressing against your knees, your hands steady despite the sting radiating from raw fingertips. Before you lies a fragment of flint, rough and jagged, a shard torn from the heart of a larger stone. It gleams faintly under the fading light, and you know this piece is more than just rock. It is the difference between survival and oblivion. Every chip, every flick of your wrist, every shaving of stone matters. You strike carefully, feeling the delicate balance between force and precision. Too hard and the flint snaps uselessly, shattering the promise of a weapon. Too soft and the edge won't hold, won't pierce thick hide or the sinew beneath. Your fingers tremble as a fresh cut blooms, raw and bleeding, but you do not stop. The pain is a reminder of the stakes. You are shaping a tool that must kill, or you will die. This is craftsmanship born from necessity, an art forged in the crucible of fear and hunger. You understand the anatomy of your prey, whether it's the thick-furred mammoth trudging across the frozen tundra, the lithe saber-tooth lurking in shadows, or the swift dire wolf darting through the underbrush. Your spearhead must be designed to penetrate tough hides, thick fur, even the sinewy muscles that shield vital organs. It must be sharp enough to puncture, yet resilient enough to survive the struggle. You carve grooves into the haft, places for your fingers to grip when blood slicks your hands. These aren't random scratches. They are calculated patterns, etched with the knowledge passed down from countless hunts. A slip in the middle of a fight means death. Barbs along the edge are not just decoration, but deliberate traps designed to catch inside flesh, making extraction painful and bleeding, weakening the animal until it falls. You learn that every predator demands a unique approach. For saber-tooths, whose tendons are thick and resistant, your blades curve to slice with precision, aiming to sever sinews that control limbs. For giant bears, weapons are weighted to withstand brutal counterattacks and are balanced for throwing with deadly accuracy at fast-moving targets. You see the evolution of cognition emerge in your hands, not just in crafting a killing instrument, but in embedding lessons from every encounter with death. Your ancestors' bones tell a story etched in scars and fractures, where attacks failed, where survival hinged on tiny design improvements. But it's not just function you carve into the tools. You embed memory. You mark the places where strikes hit true, where the weapon faltered. The grooves and patterns on your spearheads are code, reminders and instructions. The carvings encode experience, a tactile manual passed silently through generations. You can almost feel the hands of those who came before you, who learned from wounds, who understood the predator's body as well as their own. This is knowledge that cannot be spoken. It lives in the curve of a blade, the sharpness of a point, the grip of a shaft. Your tool is your teacher, your weapon, your story. Every line cut into stone or bone is a message. This is how you survive. And as you work through the night, the cold forgotten in the rhythm of your craft, you realize something profound. You are not merely shaping a weapon. You are shaping your future. The future of your family, your tribe, your species. Because in this act of chipping and carving, you are writing a silent promise across time. A promise that death will come, but so will life. And in this promise, you are more than prey. You are a force. Now it's your turn. You are no longer just the hunted. You become the hunter of fear itself. The forest around you is thick, shadows pooling like ink beneath ancient trees, and every breath you take is measured, every movement deliberate. You set your trap, but not with brute force or raw strength. Instead, you wield something far more cunning: deception. Imagine a clearing, empty but for a carefully crafted deadfall trap, logs arranged with precision, ready to fall with crushing weight on anything that triggers the snare. This isn't an accident of nature. It's a calculated device, a weapon born from understanding the habits of the beasts that stalk you. But the trap is only part of the story. Nearby, a circle of stones marks what appears to be a dying campfire. The ashes are cold, but their placement speaks a deeper message. It's a decoy, a ghost of warmth meant to lure predators toward a false sense of security, or away from where you truly lie in wait. The flickering shadows that fire once cast are long gone, replaced by an illusion designed to confuse, mislead, and buy you time. These aren't primitive tricks born of desperation. They are psychological warfare. You learn that the early humans mastered the art of manipulating predator perception. You begin to understand how they mapped dead zones, those rare pockets where certain dangerous species never dared to venture, whether because of terrain, scent, or territorial boundaries. These zones were not guesses but carefully charted territories, etched into wood, rock, and cave walls through a secret language of carvings and symbols. These markings weren't mere art or ritual. They were tactical maps, warnings encoded into the environment itself. They signaled areas safe for gathering food, for resting, for raising young, zones where the shadows of predators faded into absence. The carvings told stories of risk and refuge, showing the invisible lines between safety and danger. Some patterns represented scent markers, natural deterrents, or human-made odors meant to mislead a keen nose. Others were visual decoys, shapes carved to mimic eyes or claws, designed to unsettle predators, to make them hesitate. You see how these manipulations are not isolated acts, but part of a larger survival strategy, a strategy that turns fear into control. The environment becomes your weapon. Your carvings are your battlefield orders. You aren't just surviving the hunt anymore, you are shaping its outcome. You watch as predators approach, eyes scanning the landscape, noses twitching but slowed, confused by your traps and signs. They hesitate at the edge of dead zones, wary of the unseen forces marking the land. You realize that the same hands that carved weapons also carved illusions, tools of the mind that could turn the tide of life and death. And as you step back into the shadows, blending with the landscape you've altered, you understand something fundamental. Survival isn't just about strength or speed. It's about control. Control over space, perception, and fear itself. You have learned to not only read the world but rewrite it, turning the hunter's advantage back against them. Because in this game, every shadow you carve, every false fire you build, every deadfall you set, is a message etched deep into the wilderness. You are not the prey. You are the architect of your own survival. You move across the snow-covered ridge, the cold biting into your face, but your breath is steady, your senses sharp. Around you, your clan, your people move in a practiced silence, each step precise, each glance charged with unspoken understanding. You are not just individuals here. You are a living, breathing network bound by a language older than words. A language carved, etched, gestured, coded. There is no need to speak. The howls of wind and the crunch of frost beneath your feet are enough to heighten your awareness. You feel the cold sting of the air, the subtle shifts in light as clouds pass overhead, and beneath all of this, the pulse of your collective purpose, the hunt. But this hunt is unlike any you have known. It is not just the clash of spear against fur or the swift chase across open ground. It is a hunt orchestrated through time and space, guided by the silent wisdom embedded in stone, bone, and wood. As you move, your eyes scan the nearby outcrop where a series of carvings lies half buried under snow and lichen. These are no mere doodles. The zigzags, dots, and lines form a complex code, an ancient script of survival. Each mark is a signpost, a fragment of knowledge passed down through generations. These carvings speak of more than just place. They encode seasons, dangers, migrations, and opportunities. You run your fingers over a crescent-shaped groove, a mark some believe to be a lunar notation. It is a reminder that the moon, more than just a silent witness, guides the rhythms of predator movements and prey behaviors alike. The phases of the moon marked here are not decorative but serve as calendars, warning your clan when certain predators are most active, or when prey will gather along predictable corridors. This knowledge is vital. It transforms the unpredictable wilderness into a comprehensible landscape, a living map of risks and resources. You learn that some carvings trace the lines of hunting corridors, narrow paths etched between cliffs and rivers where game must pass. These are places where the clan can lie in wait, where ambush becomes not just possibility but strategy. Other markings reveal escape routes, hidden paths through dense forest or craggy outcrops where your people could disappear if the hunt turned deadly. These carved lines wind across surfaces like veins, pulsing with the memory of survival. They are warnings, lifelines, encoded in the very bones of the land. You notice how these carvings are layered, older symbols overwritten or intersected by newer ones. It is a language in flux, dynamic and adaptive. This is not a static record but an evolving manual, shaped by countless lives and deaths. The code lives and breathes, changing as new lessons are learned and new dangers arise. In the quiet moments between your footsteps, you sense the weight of this inheritance. Each mark is a fragment of ancestral memory, a mnemonic device that ensures no one forgets. When the wind howls or the snow blinds, these carvings become your guide, your whispered counsel. Your clan does not merely rely on instinct or luck. You rely on memory, etched deep into stone, into your minds, and into the rhythm of your movements. This memory is genetic in a sense. It is survival encoded, passed down through the generations like a sacred trust. The complexity of this code forces you to rethink what it means to communicate. It is not language as you know it, but a system that integrates observation, intuition, and survival strategy. A form of storytelling where the narrative is written not in words, but in symbols whose meanings unfold with experience and context. You begin to realize that this coded communication bridges not just distances on the landscape, but distances in time. The carvings connect you to hunters long gone and those yet to come. Each generation adds to the tapestry, updating, correcting, warning. This is a conversation across millennia, a testament to resilience and adaptation. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the ridge, you pause beside a cluster of these carvings. The cool stone feels like a pulse beneath your fingertips, an echo of countless hunts, triumphs, and losses. Here, you stand at the intersection of past and present, where survival depends not just on strength or speed, but on understanding the language of the land and its predators. The carvings are more than marks. They are lifelines, codes that keep your clan one step ahead in the deadly dance of hunter and hunted. You take a deep breath, your senses tuned to the night ahead. The coded hunt continues, not just in the physical chase but in the silent dialogue inscribed in stone, the shared memory that binds your clan. Because when lives hang in the balance, forgetting is not an option. Every line, every groove, every mark carries the weight of survival. And as you move forward, you carry not just a spear, but the knowledge of those who carved before you. The hunt is coded, and so is your future. You cradle the carved amulet in your palm, its surface worn smooth by countless hands before yours. The edges, once sharp and distinct, have softened into gentle curves, each groove a whisper from the past. This is not a tool for the hunt, nor a weapon meant to pierce flesh or split bone. Instead, it holds a different power, one rooted deep in the unseen world, in the tangled web of belief and fear that courses through your ancestors' minds. You wonder, was this amulet a charm, a talisman meant to guard not just the body but the spirit? Did holding it steady the trembling hands, quiet the pounding heart, and push back the shadows of trauma that clawed at the edges of consciousness? Was belief itself, in its intangible form, a weapon, an invisible shield against the brutal unpredictability of existence? As you turn the amulet over, the carvings tell stories beyond practical survival. They speak of a world where danger was not only physical but spiritual, where fear wasn't just the threat of a predator's teeth but the terror of forces unseen, creeping in the dark corners of the mind. You step into the depths of a cave, where ancient hands once traced the outlines of mighty predators across stone walls. But here, something remarkable catches your attention. Some images are deliberately defaced, scratched out with furious intent. The fierce lion, the looming bear, the swooping terror bird, all marred, erased, or obscured by rough gouges. Was this an act of magic? A ritualized attempt to neutralize the menace? A form of defiance against the uncontrollable? You realize that these carvings were more than art or record. They were instruments of mental survival. In a world where death stalked at every turn, where violence and loss were constants, these carvings became a way to wrest control from chaos. They were a language of resilience, a prayer etched in stone and bone. The act of defacing predator images could be a cathartic gesture, an attempt to symbolically disarm the fearsome forces hunting your clan. Perhaps these rituals were collective affirmations of power, claims that the predators' hold over the community could be broken, if only symbolically. This ritualized control over terror echoes in the psychology of trauma. You know that confronting fear head-on, giving it form and shape, can lessen its grip. These carvings offered that form, a tangible outlet for dread, a canvas on which to project and thus manage the horror that lay beyond human understanding. You see how spirituality and survival intertwine here. The boundaries between belief and biology blur. The carvings serve as buffers, calming frayed nerves and strengthening resolve. In a way, they are early forms of cognitive armor, psychological tools designed to fortify the mind against despair. The amulet in your hand becomes more than a relic. It is a testament to the complexity of human experience. It speaks to the instinct not only to endure but to find meaning amid suffering, to create hope where there is none, to impose order on chaos. As you leave the cave, the weight of the carvings lingers, not as burdens but as shields. You understand that survival was not merely a battle fought with spear and fire, but with the mind's capacity to shape reality, to resist the overwhelming darkness by creating light. These spiritual shields, carved and defaced, spoken and silent, were the first steps toward the human need for meaning. And in that need lies the seed of everything to come. You step into the cave, but it feels different now. The air is still, heavy with absence. The walls that once bore the sharp, deliberate marks of your ancestors are blank, stripped of the intricate carvings that told stories of survival, warnings, and hope. The hearth lies cold, ashes long scattered by time, no smoke curling upward to signal life. Tools rest untouched in the dim light, silent witnesses to a vanished era. Why did the carving stop? This question hangs like a shadow in the silence. For thousands of years, your predecessors etched their world in bone, stone, and ivory. Each mark was a lifeline, a survival code woven into their existence. And then, quiet. Across multiple regions, the carvings vanish from the archaeological record, as if the language of survival was suddenly forgotten or deliberately abandoned. You wonder if the predators themselves disappeared. Did the great saber-tooths and dire wolves vanish into extinction, their reign ended by shifts in climate or human dominance? Without these towering threats, did the necessity for carved warnings and codes dissolve? Did your ancestors finally rise to become apex predators themselves, masters of a world no longer shadowed by the constant threat of being hunted? But the answer is not so simple. Even as the physical carvings faded, the fears they represented did not vanish. They transformed. Environmental upheaval was relentless during this time. The ice melted, forests retreated, and new landscapes emerged. Your ancestors had to adapt to ever-changing terrain and shifting animal populations. This volatile world demanded new cognitive tools. Perhaps the need for tangible carvings gave way to mental maps and oral traditions, stories told around fires, myths passed from mouth to ear. The carved lines became invisible but no less potent, carried within memory and ritual. This shift also hints at a profound cognitive leap. Humans developed language, abstraction, and complex social structures. The survival information once chiseled in stone moved into narrative, song, and symbol. The carving stopped, but the communication evolved, becoming more sophisticated, more flexible, more deeply embedded in culture. Still, the silence in those caves lingers like a question. Did the primal fear really disappear? Or did it burrow deeper, hidden beneath the surface, re-emerging in new forms? When the saber-tooth vanished, what filled that void? What new shadows crept into the human psyche? The answer lies buried in myths, legends, and the nightmares that haunt us still. The carved symbols may have disappeared, but their echoes resonate in every ghost story told around a campfire, every shadow flickering just beyond the reach of light. You feel the pulse of those ancient fears in the tales of monsters lurking in the dark, in the architecture designed to keep danger outside, and in the cultural rituals meant to protect against unseen forces. The carving stopped, but the fear did not. Instead, it transformed, resurfacing again and again in the human story. The end of carving was not the end of survival's battle. It was simply a new chapter. And as you stand in that empty cave, you realize that the past is never truly silent. It hums beneath your skin, waiting for you to listen. You reach out, your finger tracing a groove carved into bone some 30,000 years ago. The surface is worn, smooth where hands long vanished once pressed tools deep into the marrow of survival. The hand that made this mark belongs to someone whose name, whose story, you will never know, but the pulse beneath this carved line is unmistakable. It is a thread that connects you to that distant past, a thread woven from fear, intelligence, and raw desperation. In that moment, the centuries collapse. You are no longer a modern human safe behind glass and civilization's walls. You are the same being who understood the sharpness of a predator's gaze, the cold breath behind you, the silent language etched in every cut and line. You are not so different from those who carved to remember, to warn, to endure. These marks were never just scratches on bone or stone. They were lifelines, manuals of survival written in symbols, codes, and warnings. You sense the heavy weight of what they carried, a knowledge honed by pain and repeated loss. Every groove was a lesson, every slash a story. They carved their world so they would not forget the danger, so their children might live a day longer. And you, in your world of screens and cities, still create for these same reasons. Your art, your stories, your symbols all echo this primal need to capture experience and share it across time and space. Whether it is a tattoo, a photograph, a written word, or a digital file, you are still marking the world, staking a claim against oblivion. This is not just a story of survival. It is a story of the mind, how it bends and adapts under pressure, how it finds ways to record pain, and perhaps most importantly, how it reaches out through the chasms of time to say, I was here. I felt this. I fought to live. The predators of your ancestors may have disappeared. The world they knew has changed beyond recognition, but the carvings remain. They speak to you in whispers, in echoes, in the very structure of your memory and culture. They remind you that beneath the veneer of modern life, there is still a part of you shaped by fear and ingenuity, by creativity born from desperation. The marks your ancestors left behind are not relics but living conversations, a bridge between the past and your present self. And as you pull your hand away, leaving the ancient groove untouched but deeply felt, you carry with you the knowledge that these carvings are not just history. They are a legacy, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In every line, every notch, lies a story not yet finished. The marks we leave behind are the echoes of our will to survive, to remember, and to be remembered. They call to you, asking what you will carve next.